It was 5:42 in the morning, and the airport was already making money. Not from a plane, not yet. The runways were still empty, dark strips waiting for the first departure of the day. But inside the terminal, the lights were already on. A cleaning crew moved through corridors nobody was walking yet. A security line was forming out of habit more than necessity. And behind a small counter near gate C14, a coffee machine hissed to life. A traveler walked up, tired, rolling a suitcase with one wheel that wouldn't quite sit straight. She looked at the menu. $12 for a coffee. She hesitated, the way people do when they know they're being charged more than something is worth, and buy it anyway. She bought it anyway. Somewhere else in that same building, a parking garage was already counting cars. A rental counter was already printing receipts. A restaurant host was setting out menus nobody had asked for yet. A billboard glowed above the escalators, advertising a bank nobody in that line had thought about in months. A lounge door opened for someone with a special card. A cargo truck backed into a loading dock on the far side of the property, nowhere near a single passenger. You came here to catch a flight, but the airport had something else in mind. Because an airport isn't just a place where airplanes land. It's one of the most complicated businesses in the country, and most of us walk through it several times a year without ever asking the one question that actually matters. How does an airport make its money? Here's the first thing that surprises people. You buy a $500 plane ticket. You assume that money goes to the airport. It doesn't. Not directly, and not in the way most people picture it. That $500 belongs to the airline. The airline sold you a seat, a route, fuel, crew, and a promise to get you somewhere. The airport didn't sell you any of that. What the airport sold, quietly, in the background, was something else entirely. The ground the plane sits on, the gate it parks at, the runway it uses, the terminal you're standing in right now. Think about it this way. The airline owns the journey. The airport owns the stage where the journey happens. Airlines pay for that stage. Landing fees, gate leases, terminal space, use of ground facilities. The exact structure depends on the airport, but the idea is the same everywhere. Airports charge airlines for access to their infrastructure, the same way a mall charges a store for square footage, regardless of how many pairs of shoes that store sells. Sounds simple, right? Except it isn't. Because airline fees are only one line on a very long ledger. And the rest of that ledger has almost nothing to do with airplanes at all. Look up and you'll see it. That concrete structure rising 6 or 7 stories above the terminal. Cars sliding in and out of it around the clock. It doesn't look like much. It's one of the quiet giants of airport revenue. People pay for an hour. They pay for a day. They pay for 2 weeks while they're gone on a trip they've been planning for months. Some pay extra for a spot closer to the door. Some pay for someone else to park the car entirely. Here's the part that's easy to miss. None of those people were shopping for parking. They didn't choose this garage because of a great review or a friend's recommendation. They chose it because it was simply there, sitting between them and their flight. That's the real asset an airport has. Not the coffee, not the retail, not even the runways, really. It's access. Millions of people funneled through one physical space with nowhere else to go and somewhere they need to be. The airplane may carry the passenger, but the airport controls the ecosystem surrounding the passenger. And once you start seeing it that way, the whole building starts to look different. So, what happens when that passenger gets hungry? 90 minutes before boarding, a different kind of countdown starts. A traveler wanders past a burger place, a sushi counter, a bar with 6 TVs, a bookstore, a shop selling neck pillows and phone chargers to people who forgot theirs. He's not really hungry yet. He'll be hungry in 20 minutes, and he knows it. So he buys food now instead of gambling on the flight. Then coffee, because the first one wore off. Then a bottle of water, because the security line was long and he's parched. Maybe a magazine he'll read for 10 minutes and never finish. Maybe a small gift for someone waiting on the other end. He does the math in his head. I just spent another $35. The airport does a different kind of math. It sees another transaction happening inside a space it controls. Because here's the part that rarely gets explained. The airport usually isn't the one selling the burger or the coffee. A private company runs that restaurant, hires the staff, buys the ingredients. What the airport controls is the space itself. And depending on the agreement, it can collect rent, a share of sales, or some blend of both from every single storefront inside its walls. The airport doesn't need to sell you the product. It can make money from the space where the product is sold. That idea, quietly leasing out the ground beneath commerce, is about to show up again and again. Because it turns out to be one of the most powerful tools an airport has. A different traveler lands 3 states away. She doesn't need a coffee. She needs a car. She walks past baggage claim, follows the signs, and boards a shuttle bus that loops around to a massive facility she never sees from the plane. Rows of rental cars lined up under fluorescent light, dozens of counters, hundreds of vehicles cycling in and out every single day. That facility usually isn't free for the rental companies to operate from either. Depending on the airport, they may pay for the space, for facility access, for the right to shuttle customers back and forth across airport property. Some of that cost gets built quietly into what you pay when you rent the car. Here's the pattern worth noticing. Her flight already ended. She's off the plane, out of the terminal, technically done being an airline passenger. But she's still standing on airport property, still generating airport revenue without ever realizing it. Your flight ended. Your spending didn't. The airport's relationship with you doesn't stop at the gate. It just changes shape. Not everyone waits the same way. At one gate, a man sits in a hard plastic chair, phone charger fighting 3 other people for one outlet, waiting for his boarding group to be called. Down the hall, behind a set of frosted glass doors, someone else is sitting in a leather chair with a plate of food, a glass of wine, and a view of the runway. Quiet, comfortable, working on a laptop that's actually charging. Both of them are waiting for the exact same kind of thing, time to pass before a flight. But one of them paid for that waiting to feel completely different. Airports have gotten remarkably good at this. Waiting used to be dead time, the part of travel nobody enjoyed and nobody paid extra for. Airports learned how to monetize it. Premium lounges, priority services, membership programs. All of it exists because someone realized that boredom, discomfort, and time itself could be turned into a product. 2 passengers, same airplane. 2 completely different economic experiences, both happening under the same roof. Now look up again, past the gates, past the food court, at the massive digital screens mounted along the walls. a luxury watch, a credit card, a car brand, a hotel chain. You've probably walked past 100 of these without registering a single one. But advertisers notice something you don't. An airport terminal is one of the most valuable audiences in the entire country. Think about who's standing in that terminal. People who are, almost by definition, thinking about travel, spending money, and often carrying more disposable income than the average shopper on a random Tuesday. They're not scrolling past an ad in 3 seconds. They're standing still, waiting, looking for literally anything to occupy their attention. Airports can lease that wall space, those screens, those quiet moments of boredom, to companies willing to pay for exactly that kind of captive attention. The airport isn't only selling transportation infrastructure, it's selling attention. And once a business realizes it's sitting on that much attention, it starts asking a much bigger question. What else is this land good for? From the ground, an airport feels like one building with a lot of gates. From the air, it looks like something else entirely. A small city with roads, hotels, warehouses, office parks, and open land stretching out for miles in every direction. Around a major airport, you'll often find hotels built specifically to catch travelers who land too late or leave too early. Long-term parking lots run by companies that have nothing to do with the airline industry. Warehouses, logistics centers, office buildings that exist purely because being 15 minutes from a runway is worth something to the businesses inside them. Some of the biggest businesses around an airport aren't inside the terminal at all. It's a chain reaction, and it's simple once you see it. Air travel creates traffic. Traffic creates demand. Demand creates real estate value. And real estate value creates an entirely separate layer of revenue that has nothing to do with anyone ever boarding a plane. The airport isn't merely a building anymore. In a lot of cities, it's become an economic hub, one that shapes the value of land for miles around it. While all of this is happening, the coffee, the parking, the lounges, the billboards, something completely invisible to most travelers is running in parallel. On the far side of the property, away from any gate a passenger would ever walk through, cargo. Planes are loading and unloading through the night. Forklifts move pallets. Conveyor belts sort packages. Trucks line up outside massive warehouses that never see a single suitcase. A passenger looks at the runway and sees an airplane. The business world looks at that same runway and sees a moving piece of the global supply chain. Cargo handling, warehousing, logistics leases, specialized ground transportation, all of it can generate revenue for an airport, completely separate from anything a passenger buys or an airline pays to board people. An airport can move people in the morning and move millions of dollars worth of goods through that same ecosystem, all without the two ever crossing paths. It's one more layer stacked on top of everything else. And it raises an obvious question. With all of this money moving through one piece of land, who actually owns it? Here's where the story gets more complicated and more interesting. A lot of major US airports aren't privately owned corporations chasing shareholder profit. Many are run by public airport authorities, government-linked entities built specifically to operate that airport and reinvest in it. Their money can come from a mix of sources: airline agreements, parking, concessions, leases, and in some cases, public bonds used to fund construction. But that money isn't sitting in a vault waiting to be counted as pure profit. It's funding an operation with enormous, relentless expenses. Runways don't repave themselves. Terminals don't maintain themselves. Security systems don't upgrade themselves for free. A parking garage that generates revenue today had to be built, often at a staggering cost, before it ever made a dollar. So if airports make this much money across this many channels, where does it all go? This is the part of the story most people never hear, because it's not as flashy as a $12 coffee or a billboard for a luxury watch. It's also the part that makes the whole picture make sense. Revenue is not the same thing as profit. An airport can pull in money from airlines, parking, restaurants, retail, rental cars, advertising, lounges, cargo, and real estate, genuinely all at once, and still be pouring an enormous share of it straight back into infrastructure. Construction projects that take years, debt payments on bonds issued a decade ago, security systems that never stop needing upgrades, thousands of employees keeping the entire operation running 24 hours a day, every day of the year. The ecosystem is real. The money moving through it is real. But so is the cost of keeping a small city running under one roof. Airlines, passengers, parking, restaurants, retail, rental cars, advertising, lounges, cargo, real estate. The airport sits in the middle of all of it, not just collecting money, but constantly spending it to keep the machine alive. Back to that traveler from the very beginning. Coffee in hand, suitcase with the one crooked wheel. She walks through security, checks the departure board, passes a restaurant she doesn't stop at this time, a billboard she doesn't consciously read, a lounge door she'll never walk through. She gets to the gate. She boards the plane. The plane pulls back from the gate and lifts into the morning light. She thinks, okay, I'm finally done spending money. But by then, the airport had already made money in ways she never noticed. The parking, the space her coffee was sold in, the attention her eyes gave to a screen she barely looked at, the land beneath the rental counter 3 miles away that someone else will use tonight. The infrastructure that made all of it possible, quietly billing itself against every dollar that came in. You thought the airport was where your journey began. But from the airport's perspective, your journey wasn't the beginning of anything. Your journey was the product. And the plane? The thing that felt like the entire point of being there, it was only one piece of the machine. If you want us to expose the hidden business model behind another ordinary place you visit every week, subscribe. And drop a comment with the business you want us to investigate next. Because some of the biggest money machines in America aren't hidden at all. They're hiding in plain sight.